joining us now, ladies and gentlemen, a brand new rules authority for us in the public, but somebody who's been around the NFL for 15 years.
Yeah.
Made his debut last night alongside Joe Buck and a man who's a big fan of him, Troy Aikman. Ladies and gentlemen, Russell Yurk. Atta baby.
Yeah, Russ.
How you doing, Russ?
Hey, great to be here.
Hey, honored to have you. Great debut last night. How'd you feel up there? A little jitters, maybe? You know, a lot of eyes on you kicking off the season. You're in there with two Hall of Famers. Joe, obviously, in Broadcast Hall of Fame. Troy, actually in the NFL Hall of Fame and Broadcast Hall of Fame. Then you get dropped in there as the rules aficionado with, the biggest change, seemingly, in the history of football happening at the very start of it with the kickoff. How'd you feel going in, and how do you feel going into the season, Russ?
Absolutely great. I mean, Joe and Troy are amazing. They really, kind of helped me to kind of understand the broadcast side of things, because obviously I know the football side of things. The broadcast side was a little new, so like you said, little jitters, but great team, great preparation. Couldn't have asked for a better group of guys.
All right, well, congratulations on a great night. Got cut short.
Yeah, it did.
Obviously, we couldn't get too much football. You know, they said we still got to keep waiting with the rain in the universe. It'd still be a great Hall of Fame weekend in Canton, Ohio. Obviously, all conversation has been about this new kickoff. Now, Colin Johnson, absolute dog.
Yeah.
Dougie Davis-Mills still doing his thing. Obviously, those are going to be conversations from the game, and those will be forgotten in about 2-3 weeks. But this kickoff thing is going to be talked about for the entirety of the season as it goes. First kickoff, I was watching at home. I assume you were watching as well. As a kickoff person, I assume, because we've done this drill in practice, if you get an early start like the guy who makes the tackle did, he was off before everybody else, you're going to have quite an advantage. And I know that the NFL didn't want to use a whistle to indicate that the ball has been touched for everybody to go. How are they actually telling people they can go? And how is this going to kind of evolve through the season, you think, Russ?
Yeah, the players are watching for the ball. I think the receiving team players were initially going to be keying off the kicking team players, but my understanding is that gives them, a little bit of a delay. So some of them you saw looking back last night as well. And they can, move. They can prepare to go downfield. They just can't take their feet off the ground before the ball is touched. And so I think they're going to get better and better with that over training camp and as the season progresses. And generally, they did a good job last night. There were a few fouls where they left early, but not many.
So they can prepare.
Yeah. So long as 1 foot on the ground or
no,
two?
Two. Got to stay base, he said. You got to stay base, right? You got to have foot on line, too, right? On yard line?
1 foot on the yard line and both feet on the ground until the ball's touched or the ball touches the ground. But they can, as you saw, some guys would get into some sort of a lunge stance beforehand to try to, be ready to go right when the ball's touched. So there's a lot to that.
Okay, so how are they going to monitor it? You said the guys were pretty good last night. On the first one, there was an offside. Second half kickoff, they called in illegal formation, but then we look back, it was like not really. Are they just banking on that guys will do it right? Because let's say, I just want to toss a hypothetical out there. Welcome to sports media, Russ. Yeah. Obviously, you've watched this. Hypothetical, Super Bowl, minute 15 left in the game.
Biggest play.
Okay, minute 15 left in the game, up to or whatever. Somebody is a foot leaning over or gone on both sides. But massive play just happens. They're going to call that back? Like, how are they going to monitor? Let's not just say Super Bowl. Let's say every single game. How are they going to monitor it? And how do the refs on the side that are going to be the ones tasked with saying if anybody's offsides or not, do they just get like a go sign or sound from somebody? How is it kind of being officiated, if that makes sense?
Now,
Question.
Yeah, and one thing you noticed last night is, unlike normal kickoffs in the past and normal scrimmage plays, there were no officials on the actual lines where the players were lining up, the 35 and 40.
Okay.
They're either in front of them or behind them. So what they're doing is they're looking at the feet on the ground while peripherally watching the play and seeing when the ball's touched. And they're not going to be hyper technical on this, right? Just like you might have players on a line of scrimmage for potential false starts that, might leave a fraction of a second early. Nobody wants that called. So they're looking for the big ones. They're going to get the big ones. And, I assume they'll call it the same in the playoffs and in the Super Bowls they do in the regular season. So there'll be a little leniency there.
It's not the NFL's fault, not your fault that you're telling us this information, but the conspiracy fodder is going to be, that's just the game we're in with how popular it is and how literally, everything is like this much of a difference on whether or not your city is able to celebrate or your city is bummed out for either the week or the entire offseason. So it's like there's going to be, anytime you got, because they'll show, Oh, my God. Yeah. The amount of – so you're telling me?
Yeah, you kidding me?
Like the amount of those that's going to take place as everybody kind of gets used to it, I think is inevitable. But I like the fact that the NFL is trying to save the kickoff, which I think should be the overwhelming response by everybody. Connor has a question for you, Russ.
Yeah, Russ, obviously the biggest one is the kickoff, but are there other new rules you think that will bring conversation this year, whether it's, reviewing penalties or anything like that we're not really paying attention to now, but once the games start might bring some sort of fodder during the season?
Yeah, I think the one that's going to have the most impact probably is the fact that teams now can challenge a third time if they're successful on either of their first two. Because in the past, if they had to win both of their first two to have a third challenge. So I think they're going to be more apt to challenge, especially late in the game when and not be afraid of not having a third challenge down the stretch. So I think that's one that's going to be big. Another one that will come into play once in a while is when a runner's near the sideline, and if they're hit, like we saw with Kansas City last year, and Patrick Mahomes, if they throw a flag for a late hit out of bounds, and it turns out that the contact was inbounds, replay can help with that and help pick up that flag. So you're going to see some things like that will happen from time to time, but they will be pretty impactful when they occur.
Are they just radioing down like immediately, or is that something more so where you actually have to throw the challenge flag on those sideline hits?
No, that's something that they'll be radioed down from the booth.
How much more booth? So we're going to have a little bit more booth action.
Good.
That's good news, right? Don't you all agree that that's good news, Russ?
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, the replay official's there to help them when they can see things on the camera that everybody sees at home. Why not be able to help it in real time?
You were, right, the replay, you were the guy, right?
Yeah, I was a replay official as part of a crew, and I also then ran replay, was the head of replay for 6 years in the office.
So I always had, which might be a false assumption, so I do apologize if this is the case, that the on-field refs were kind of like tense against the replay refs. And like replay refs almost wanted to try to make the refs on field look good to maybe make them feel good so that there isn't a beef, because these refs obviously work their asses off. Oh, now we got somebody in the booth who's saying that I'm wrong. This whole, managing that relationship, has that been a thing? And are refs more apt to be open to technology helping them make the right call as opposed to maybe whenever this first got instituted?
Great question. That's absolutely changed. 15, 20, 25 years ago when replay first came in, you're right. On-field officials saw replay as just a way to expose their errors. Now they've really kind of brought them in as part of the crew, no different than the on-field officials, to help them get it right. And they've really embraced the technology. They've embraced the communication. They want that information, and they realize at the end of the day, a better officiated game makes everybody look better.
Hell yeah. Hey, that's a big deal.
Yes.
That's a big deal whenever you talk about humans, man. Especially if you're a ref, the confidence you have to have is near cockiness.
Yeah.
Right? It has to be your pride. You have to be a very prideful. You have to, because you're walking into hell.
Yeah.
Potentially every single week. And nobody's there for you.
No.
Unless you screw over the other side, then you're on their side. But lo and behold, for every action, there was an equal and opposite reaction. They hate you on the other side. So, the amount of, what's that? Chutzpah that, the refs have to have. That's tough for them to maybe hear that they're wrong, especially from some, I think that's a big deal for humans to get to the point where it's we will use the 8K technology that we have to help us, and it'll be a teammate as opposed to somebody who's trying to take our jobs. Mm-hmm. I love it. I love everything about it, Russ. Pac-Man has a question for you, Russ.
Hey, Russ, going back to the kickoff, can you challenge it? What's the rules on challenging it if I think the guy's offside or not offside?
You can challenge when the ball is touched, if it touched a player, if it touched the ground, and where it touched it in relation to the various lines. That'd probably be most relevant for whether it got to the 20 for purposes of treating it like a kickoff out of bounds, or whether it touched in the end zone or in the field of play for where we put the ball in touchback. But you can't challenge whether a player left early. If they lined up with a foot on the line with both feet on the ground, whether a foot came off the ground before the ball was touched, just like illegal formations on normal scrimmage plays or false starts, that's not reviewable, and that's not something they'll get assistance usually from upstairs on.
And so, Russ.
There's going to be some people mad.
Russ, is that going to be after extended conversation calls, though, potentially reversed? Because we know what extended conversation means, right? That means we are getting a little bit of assistance from everybody.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, it's at some point, if things occur, the league is flexible on that, especially on assistance. The officiating department works very closely with the competition committee, and if they need to, pull the owners together to modify the rule, they can do that. At the end of the day, they want to get this right. They want the kickoff to work, and they're going to do what they need to do to make sure it works.
I hope they do too, to save it all, because you know what happens next if they don't. But it's like just knowing the humans, personality traits of the humans that are on those kickoff teams, like they're bottom of the roster. They're trying to make it. So like just depending on them to, like in baseball when the guy catches it, to tag up, which is kind of taught since you're like a little kid. I think that's going to be an interesting kind of development. And I completely understand why they don't want 3 whistles for one play either, because that's not really interesting. They'll figure it out, though. We will figure it out because we need to figure it out.
Yeah, baseball, there's also a guy standing next to you that's, telling you exactly when to go. Yeah. Like, and it's go. Yeah, very close to him. Like there's a coach on the field next to you.
But we'll figure it out.
Of course, always do.
There's something else new coming that is a big deal and been talked about for a while. Let's head to Hammer Don. What's on Diggs, Russ?
Yeah, Russell, you talked about the adaptation of technology and the acceptance of that. Where are we at with the Hawkeye technology and potentially replacing the chain gang for the first down markers?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, they're installing those cameras now, and they're practicing it in the preseason. So they're going to do a test throughout the preseason to see it works. If it works, I think they're going to probably, if it does work, institute it next year in 2025. I don't necessarily know that they're going to be putting in for the 2024 regular season, but it's actually really cool because the chains will still be on the sideline, but when the referee calls for a measurement, they'll announce that they're calling for a measurement, maybe make a signal, and then like you see in tennis, they'll go to a graphic on the screen and in the stadium that will, come down and show the ball in relation to the line to gain, and whether it's a first down and if it's short by how much. Looks really cool.
Russ.
Looks cool.
In theory, all this shit is so good. We're just talking about from the world we live in, which is like the internet.
Like, can you trust it?
Yeah, bingo. That's the whole. That's all. That's like everything is now like, and I guess that's going to be no matter what happens. But it's like I'm very pumped for the Hawkeye technology to come in there.
Oh yeah,
that should expedite. That should be
for sure
big time.
That should be make the game better. How about the reviews? It feels like with the conversation from the booth a little bit more in the ears and maybe a little bit more conversation, the review times have seemingly gone down. But there's a couple in this is literally your department. There's been a couple of do not take any offense to this. Your job is much harder than any of ours who judge you. And I assume we have said things that you have heard that you don't love. And we apologize for that. We do. Russ, thank you for your service to the NFL. But we do apologize for anything we've said that we might not fully understand. And that's across the board. Now, with that being said, these reviews, sometimes too long, we agree. Like if everybody on the internet seemingly can agree on something quicker than what's happening in real time in the reviews, like that's not good because the internet doesn't agree on anything. So it's like that's always been a chatter. How are they expediting that process? Because I know that the reviews at the beginning, the reason why some older NFL fans didn't like is you're slowing up the game. It's like, have we gotten to a point where we think those are going to be much quicker and we've kind of worked out how the best process is to get to the right answer quicker?
I do. And Hawkeye is also, helping to put together a system where they furnished the New York, the AMGC, and the replay officials at the stadium, all the different camera angles in real time. So what that allows them to do is get to the angles quicker. They're working together so they can make decisions quicker. And I agree with you. If there's not something clear and obvious in 60 seconds or so, which is what the rule book technically says, then stay with the ruling on the field. It's not clear and obvious. Let's move on.
Now, with that being said, if it seems like common sense, we also need that. But then we don't need it in big situations to screw it. I mean, it's a never-ending dog chasing its tail that you guys have to figure out. But we do appreciate the striving for making it better.
How the players going to see, like, third down? Like, say if I'm sitting on a route, if they got the smart thing.
They'll still have sticks. Yeah, they will still have sticks. Right, sticks are still there. It's just not the chain in between that used to get tied up in knots.
Correct. The sticks will still, actually, the chain will still be out there. The sticks will still be on the sideline with the chain. One, so the players and the teams understand where the line to gain is. But two, if for some reason that technology fails, they can still bring out the chains in that situation and measure.
Handy dandy. Yeah. Hey, I'm happy the chain guys still got a gig. Right. Let's go, chain guys. You made it. They're making it to the streaming era of the NFL.
Unbelievable.
That has to be.
The odds on that.
I mean, it had to be plus 100,000.
At least.
Oh, yeah.
At least when those things were just trotting
Lasers.
out there with those
microchips.
And then they would get tied up in a knot, and we got to put this little plastic thing. This is the exact yard. It's like, all right.
Index cards.
And then, Gene Steratore.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. What a time. Congrats to the chain gang.
Yeah. Hats off to them.
Hats off. I mean, way to go. Now they're the old faithful.
That's right.
That's good news. Last question for you, Russ. We appreciate you taking time. Are you still in Canton? Or you travel home already?
Yeah, no, I'm in Canton. I'm getting ready to go to the airport now and fly back home.
We appreciate you taking time. Ty has a question for you. Last one.
Russell, in the last couple years, we've heard, the points of emphasis that the referees are kind of focused on going into the year, and whether it's been, defensive pass interference or roughing the passer, it seems like early in the season, those get called quite a bit just to kind of set the tone. Do you know what the point of emphasis that the referees are going to be focusing on this year is going to be, so we kind of have an idea what kind of calls might be called a bunch through the first 6 weeks or so of the season?
I mean, I think they're still looking like they do most years at illegal contact. When you have, illegal chucking downfield, that's a point of emphasis, has been for years, and is something they're emphasizing again this year. And also the difference between defensive holding and defensive pass interference when a ball's in the air versus when the hold happens before the ball's thrown. And so understanding that two-step process, because what officials need to do is they need to see the action, then they need to sometimes just turn their head and look back at the quarterback and see if the ball's in the air. Just re-emphasizing that, I think, is going to be a big part.
All right, Russ, have an incredible season. We appreciate you. What a show, Monday Night Football, every single week. You're going to be,
back in it.
Will you stop by if there's any shit that pops off?
Absolutely. Wouldn't miss it.
Okay, we really appreciate that, because I feel like, and I don't know what the conversation is in the official world about us, I do feel like we pay attention to officials and rules, maybe more than any other show in the history of the sport.
No doubt. Because
we know you are a massive part of the game and the outcome. And there is phenomenal refs out there. But then also there's situations where humans potentially make mistakes, and then somehow we're not able to fix it, and the whole world talks about it. So if we were able to have you come on 15 years in this thing, you would know better than us. We appreciate the hell out of that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Big fans.